I was like, I haven't burned this to the ground yet. Maybe I just like go on my way so I don't hurt these people, you know?
Mm,
Because there were two sides to me. There was a side that was very kind, and there was a side that was a complete trickster and so incredibly hurt. Like just like I can't even properly put it into words. I was so hurt I didn't even realize I was hurt. I didn't even, I had no idea. When you're living on the street, like that Oliver Twist life, it's like you look at someone and you know exactly what to say to them so that they don't hurt you. You learn really
mhm,
quick. And then it becomes like, okay, well, how can I get this person to buy me a slice of pizza? Or how can I get this person to feel bad to give me a cigarette or,
mhm.
or give me some change? Or most people are going to school to learn how to do math. You know what I mean? And I'm kind of navigating through this world by the seat of my pants.
Into the fire, here we go. Into the fire, head to toe. Into the fire, to be seen. Into the fire, to be.
Hello, this is Mark A. Lewis. This is the Sacred Village podcast. Today I have an actor friend, somebody from Vancouver. He's more than an acquaintance or even a friend in the film industry, the industry that I was a part of for many years, many, many years. It was a huge chapter for me. Steve and I connected during that time. So I call him Steve. He goes by Coyote. We're going to get into that. We're here because we did what I would distinguish or I would identify as a rite of passage together through the book, The Presence Process. We came together. We invited men and women, but what happened was men came. We had about 8 men, myself included, and we went through this book called The Presence Process. It's a 10-week process of breath work and mantras. And we, as a collective, we came together each week to support each other and to discuss what was happening, what was coming up, our process of going in. It's a very powerful book because the breath work and how he uses the mantras and his discourse to direct you towards the body, towards the lived experience is very profound. For when I was reading it for the first time, this is a book by Michael Brown, by the way, called The Presence Process. When I was reading it and going through the text, for me, it was like reading Shakespeare. It's nothing like Shakespeare. It's not about the language. It's about the concepts. It was a paradigm shift for me. It was a part of a broader paradigm shift that was already happening. I was attending Sundances. I was working with ayahuasca. Things were opening up. The way that I was viewing the world was shifting. Colossal paradigm shift, and this book was a part of it. And Michael Brown was able to articulate premises, concepts that were very important for me at the time in terms of orientating and understanding the work that I was doing, quote unquote work. What is that? When we're breathing and feeling and experiencing emotion on a deeper level, I guess we call it work because it is something you have to choose to do, like getting up and going to work. It's something that has to have meaning, that has to have value. You have to, put your work boots on, metaphorically speaking, and get out there. And of course, there's a reluctance to do that, especially, when you're getting up to go to work at 5 a.m. and it's -20 out, there's a reluctance. And that's kind of comparably what it was like, deciding to get into that bathtub and do that heavy breathing and knowing that big feelings were going to come up and then doing that twice a day. I believe it was twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. So actor, rite of passage, man, he just had a baby girl like 3 or 4 months after my third child was born. So I'm going to ask him about that experience. So he's in the middle of it too. Both of these children are under a year old. So we're in the thick of it that way. Coyote, this is going to be strange for me to call you that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to work with it though. I'm going to do my best. There's a few things that I want to talk to you about. I thought I was going to delve more into cinema and into the experience of being in the film industry, being a filmmaker. For me, my focus was on writing and directing. Now, you're an actor, and I know that you also delve into the creative side, into the writing side. I'm actually going to pass the microphone to you. I'm going to let you introduce yourself in the way that you feel is appropriate, and let's have an introduction and, go wherever you'd like to. Over to you.
Okay. Yeah. I was like, when you were talking, I just started thinking about the presence process. And I think what's really interesting is like, I think it was the first time um that I'd experienced feeling and, you know, emotion, uh, and like separating the narrative from it, like separating the story from it. And I think that has been a real ongoing theme because at this other, you know, a breath workshop, and they were talking about how we just constantly label traumas. Um, this guy was, you know, his theory was that it's actually just energy that needs to process, emotion that needs to process. And I found that really interesting. Like you were one of the first people I met that had anything to do with, you know, storytelling, you know, and how we met was kind of just happenstance. And so it's really interesting, like to like kind of be here right now. So if I go, it's funny that you call me Steven, 'cause like Steven's like technically not my name either. So we can delve into that. But my name is now, as of the paperwork I'm like finally filling out and like putting through, is like I go by Coyote, which was a name that was um, given to me by a close friend that, you know, we kind of share, that we talked about it, and I wasn't named by, you know, a specific, you know, it had nothing to do. It was more so this kind of higher self that called to me a long time ago, and I had to, you know, I had to reclaim my life from a lot of the trauma, a lot of the things, you know, I'd been through. You know, there's so many things, like there's so many directions we could first take this. I mean, when we talk about the film industry, like it's so funny because I think the way I approach any work now is so different than my past ventures. It's so incredibly different. Like I just got off a phone call with a production in the States, and through it I was able to kind of, I think I'm able to get like a really nice guy a job, you know. And and when I do this before, it was just, you know, when I was involved in the film industry, it was just the most self-seeking, self-serving, obsessive chase after this idea of what a creation, like what the pull off of a creation could possibly be. And I got a lot of joy on this phone call, getting somebody else a job, which is just, you know, it's a new experience, but from this new point of view, after the presence process, walking through, I think, a lot of discomfort, a lot of the things I refused to for a long time, is like I'm truly able to put myself in a position to serve others. And you know, it makes me think about like how many times I've been asked to like read someone's screenplay and like didn't, or like how many times I was asked to like come on and help out on, you know, for a day on set, and I just didn't. I was too busy. You know, I was just like kind of that guy. So yeah, it's interesting because we have, you know, I think I look at you as more now, like we've stayed in touch over the years, and usually when we talk, we kind of have these like really kind of deep and philosophical conversations, and kind of healing conversations too. And like honestly, when we first met, you had this silence to you, this comfort, and you know, speaking between moments that I did not understand in the least, and I would try and fill the air with, I think, a lot of words. And so it's interesting. I think you're, you know, you're so made for, you know, having a podcast like this, and the other kind of, you know, ceremonial work and whatnot that you're pursuing now. Is it totally makes sense to me. It's just like, of course he is. Like, what else would he be doing, you know? So I don't know, like, I don't know if that's an introduction. Let me see, I am someone who's struggled immensely with my human condition and my career, and I would not change. I think when my daughter was born, um, you know, it all finally made sense, and I don't think I would change any of it.
Thank you. So is Steve your name?
No, no, my actual, like my legal name is Donald Roberts.
Well, that is funny. So
That
we're
is funny,
bouncing
hey?
around. So how did
Yeah,
Steve
yeah,
come
yeah.
up? Where did Steve come
Oh
from?
man, if we're going back that far, yeah, I mean
I
it's
have a memory of this. And I don't think
yeah.
I really knew the story. I remember that there was this distinction between Steve and then another name. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, so it's funny because like you know, when we did the presence process, you know, that was during the pandemic, I believe. Like that was like strict lockdown and all of that, and so one of the things I had the time to do was to kind of go back and see. I don't know how like deep you get on these podcasts. So I don't know like what like you want to, you know, what I can say and what you say is too much. You can just cut me off at any point. I like won't take it personally. But like that around that time, I had some time to soul search, and so one of the things I did is I applied for the through the Freedom of Information Act, and I got my child welfare file because my early life was such a blur that I don't really remember most of it, and anything I do know, I've been able to piece together from this file, and just a bunch of like kind of fragmented memories, and But so like it's interesting because like so if we're like I said like cut me off. So my mom was from East Dan and she was a part First Nations woman. Uh and that would so I also am, and I don't know how or what band or even the proper like the problem is the ministry keeps really poor records, but what I was able to piece together is she actually lived a couple blocks from like Pigeon Park. Like I don't know if you know where that is. So we were there for a very brief time. She was very sick. I was with my little sister at the time, and we kind of went back, and we were already at this point, I mean we were like babies, and we were already kind of in the care of the ministry, and then so like from there was this episode with my mom, and she wasn't able to take care of us, so we went into a home with my grandmother, and my grandmother was like she was a devout Jehovah's Witness, like as devout as they could come, like just totally kind of indoctrinated and obsessed with that. And so she actually gave us, like me and my sister, we had this like on a short-term custody order that she had. She gave me and my sister to a family that went to her Jehovah's Witness, like Kingdom Hall Church. That's what they call it, is the Kingdom Hall. And then, so this family took us. It was like completely not supposed to happen. There's like proof that backs that up, like all through my record. I actually had a really good social worker, ironically, who kept kind of underlining things and circling things, and so it was pretty wild to see that, in hindsight. But so this family took us, and they were afraid. They were afraid that the ministry would get involved, and they would take us away. And so they actually moved us from BC, where we were staying in, I believe, Richmond at the time, all the way to Nova Scotia. So that was like away from my mom, away from my dad, who was already kind of out of the picture, away from my other brother, who he ended up growing up in care out east here, or sorry, out west here. And so we like all moved there. And they renamed us as well. So they changed my sister's name, and they changed my name, but they never actually did it legally, right? They never like filed the proper paperwork or anything. So I carried this name with me by these people that I mean, and I'll just I'm honestly like an open book. I don't really hide anything. Like so that was a really broken home that we were put into, and there was a lot of serious trauma and neglect, and a lot of spiritual harm. I think the hardest thing that I've had to work on is dealing with a lot of the spiritual trauma that my concept of God was, I was told that God was like a thief in the night, and he was going to enter your home at any point if you did anything wrong. And he wasn't, a God of mercy or a creator of love or anything like that. He was just this like, if you're bad, you're going to be done away with when Armageddon hits, So that indoctrination just did I just grew up like afraid of kind of everything. And there was other things that happened there that like just physical and sexual and all sorts of trauma, like all sorts of stuff happened. And then as soon as I got old enough, there's like an incident in my file where I took a bunch of pills and I drank a bunch of booze, and I literally tried to end my life like really early on. And a lot of it I think was
How
because
old?
I was at that time, I think I was like 10 or 11 at that time. I can't really like pinpoint it exactly. So I'd gone through a lot of the heavy abuse by that point.
Okay.
They actually had my older brother and my older sister who they'd adopted, but they were freaked out because apparently nearing the end of that adoption, they were like hesitant about letting these people like adopt those children. So with us, they just, I guess, my point of view is that they probably assumed, okay, this isn't going to go well. We need to get out of here if we want to keep these kids. And so they did. And I really think, I don't look at these people as, I don't know. I kind of have a lot of forgiveness now. I have a lot of forgiveness. I have a lot of peace to it. Like, I think that's why I can speak openly about it. I understand what being indoctrinated, what spiritual harm you can cause people by inflicting such fear in them, and how vulnerable people just are so easily influenced by that. Obviously, there's emotion I got to go and process and kind of deal with. And yeah, so I'd taken, I think it was like over 80 Tylenol, and I smashed it with a bottle of vodka, and then I ended up in the hospital. And we ended up, because of that incident, we ended up going back on the radar of the ministry. Like basically we showed up and these kids were like, okay, like this kid shows up having almost killed himself, and then people start asking questions. And then so all of a sudden the ministry was starting to get involved. I think they started to kind of investigate, but it wasn't a big investigation. They were kind of just doing I think the bare minimum at that point. And then so I did what a lot of people do, in situations where they feel unsafe. They're young, and I just like ran. I just kind of hit the street, to be honest. I just went to the street. And this was in Nova Scotia. It was different, and it was the first taste of freedom that I had. It was like I made friends with like other squeegee kids, and we like partied and went to punk shows, and I drank and experimented with like LSD, and I did lots of that stuff, and it
It's
just kind of
interesting
it was like
throwing LSD in
yeah,
the mix at that age after that
man,
level of
yeah.
trauma like that
hmm
is going to help you make sense of it. I don't know, perhaps it did in a way, but it just seems like the wrong cocktail at the wrong time.
I think so. I mean, like, it's so odd. It's like having that point of view now where I wouldn't really change anything. There were just experiences that I had that were so spiritual now and have shaped me to like who I am now. Like there's just, when I, been terrified of this concept of God, I kind of went between this place of like being very agnostic to being very scared. But there are times like when I look back, I remember at one point, I'll just share with you like one story is I used to like panhandle on this specific corner in Halifax, and it was like around Spring Garden Road. Like if you ever walk that, you see kind of random people panhandling there and stuff. But so I was like panhandling, and I remember this Jesse kid. He like looked like me, talked like me, acted like me. Probably came from a similar broken home like me. And he like was adamant that I like go hang out with him that evening. And he was like, "Yeah, man, whatever you're doing, just like come. There's these dudes. I met these dudes. We're gonna go do this thing." And I just like I can't explain this, but I'm panhandling, and someone actually throws $40 in my hat, and I'm like, that's like a lot of money. And I was like, I did like exactly what you thought I did. I went and got absolutely wasted. Like I got absolutely hammered, and I passed out, and I forgot to meet my friend. And then some days went by. And then people told me the news about this kid, and and this is someone that like I met. He didn't have like he wasn't a violent kid. He was like, but he got in with some older guys, and they ended up going to try and do like a B&E, and then it turned into a home invasion. And then the elderly couple that were involved in that home invasion, they ended up dying like in the hospital. I know that one of them was a veteran, and I'm pretty sure his wife died shortly after. Now I can't explain what kind of chance it was that just someone dropped $40 in my hat. I didn't go meet my friend. And this is someone that like I thought was pretty cool. Like I definitely would have just hung out with them and not thought of anything of it. And it was just kind of an experience that like, oh man, okay, maybe there's like this is one of the things that stayed with me over the years. And then when I was ready to actually look at it and, ask myself if, there is a possibility of some kind of higher power, that was one of the instances that like came to mind where it was such a fluke chance. Like it was such a fluke chance because, I don't even know where that guy is now. You're just like, what are the odds, And so that was that, like, you'd swear that like would kind of wake me up, but I didn't really think anything of it at the time. I was like, oh, that sucks about Jesse. Like, this is horrible, but like, whatever, that's never going to happen to me. You know what I mean? Because you're young, and I mean, I was young and just like completely naive to what was really happening, I think. And then it was a whole lot more street. Like I just felt like I kind of belonged for the first time. And then lots of other like embarrassing things happened. I struggled like a lot. I'd love to say it like got better. I don't like getting caught too much in like the stories of it. And like I write memoir as well. At the beginning of my memoir, like one of the things I've made adamant is that it's just this is how I kind of pieced together my life the best I could, right? Because I had such a fragmented and shattered early life that it's so hard to tell what was kind of like real and then what my brain kind of pieced together to make sense of the situations that I was kind of in. And
Mm-hmm.
that's always evolving. Like I've had things I was positive were memories, and then I went back and was like, no, I made that shit up. Like so it's kind of, I'm always kind of up for debate. And like any good memoirist, like if you look at Mary Carr or anyone, it's like they're always challenging their memories. They're always like challenging and like investigating thoroughly their memories. And so I'd like to work with that sort of specificity and discipline. And so I'm always kind of challenging. But that was one of the instances I was like, wow, okay, this could go really bad for me. But still, like, just I pushed past, and it wasn't that big of a deal at the time.
When you reflect, who represented mom and dad? Who were the parents or the
Oh boy.
guardians or the mentors that
Yes. they
What does that
were
look like?
there was a huge odd power dynamic where the feminine energy was like incredibly strong, and the masculine energy was very it was very like out of balance. It was very out of balance. The dad in that situation was too scared to confront his son about abuse and things, and the mom was like controlling, and she was also, quite violent
This
in
is
her
the
own way. And
Jehovah's Witness.
yeah, yeah, and then she drank, and these are
But she
people
was
that like
she was like the toxic matriarch, if you will.
I would say so. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. That didn't change for as long as I knew them. Like that just didn't change, and yeah, yeah, so
And then your
yeah.
biological, what happened to your mom? Biological mom.
She died of an overdose. That happened when I believe I was 15 when that happened.
Okay. So you
Um
were taken away from her because she wasn't able to parent properly. And
yeah,
then,
she suffered with mental illness, so she
okay.
was schizophrenic. And that was a thing, but the thing that I was able to piece together is like, this is a woman that was already quite down, and then her children were just kind of taken away, and no one was really going out of their way to find them. And so
Hmm.
that's brought up like certain resentments for me, I think. But
Like towards the system.
yeah, I mean, if anyone's kind of, responsible. I mean, if you look up some of the stats of like the odds of like a foster kid, like even reaching 18, the age of 18, or what happens to them when they age out, or the odds of them even finishing school, they'll offer like, oh, we give them like free education, like if they finish school, and for depending on where those children come from, like that, there's not that many that make it to the point of like, university. And I'll just say this, like I was flat out borderline illiterate until I was like 30, until I was like
Mm.
31. And then I got better. And then I definitely wasn't a writer. I definitely wasn't like, I mean, that took the studying and the amount of hours I just like, even for the pandemic, like I literally wrote 8 to 12 hours a day for the couple years, right? Like I just didn't stop. There was a hunger that hit, and things like the presence process really started to help me with that, and kind of look at writing, creating as like a spiritual practice. And I was able to, hear the honesty on the work. I was able to hear like, hey, maybe you got to learn a little more about grammar and punctuation. Maybe you got to like learn the difference between an active and a passive sentence. Like maybe you got to figure out what your voice is, and figure out the story that you need to tell. So that was, I think spirituality has helped me a lot with that. Yeah.
There's a chapter there that I'm missing. So you're like 15, you're a street kid, and then I met you when you were between 25 and 28.
About that. Yeah.
Before about 25, because this was before you even aspired to be an actor, because of our mutual friend John Callender, who was an actor.
That's right.
And he would go back and forth between ostensibly the downtown east side and the film industry, the acting industry,
Hmm.
and he would succeed, quote unquote, in both roles
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
Like he would be
Yeah.
fully submerged in the downtown east side, and then next thing you know, he's back on track and he's getting roles with Anthony Hopkins, and because
Hmm.
he could play bad guy number two till the cows come home. He
Hmm.
was so castable that way, but he was also very, very talented, very, very intelligent, high level of
Hmm.
ADHD, which kept him back and forth
Oh yeah.
between drug use. And I mean, that's just sort of, skimming the surface around this fellow who's like a really fabulous human being, but walks that line there. But when I met you, you were kind of like the healthy guy in the chair, looking after the
Right.
addicts.
Oh
That's
man.
about 25. So how do you go from being Oliver Twist,
Yeah.
ostensibly it's like Oliver Twist incarnate here,
Yeah.
and you're on the street, you're 15.
Mm.
What's that 10 years? And I know that
Well,
you went through the
that's
door, but yeah,
yeah.
what's that look like?
Yeah.
How does that
So
climbing
that
out of that trench
so
happen?
where it becomes a real blur was probably from that age to later. Like at one point, not too shortly after the pills and the booze, I kind of met this squeegee girl. She was like a street punk, but like a street punk with a really good family, and like kind of like went slumming it on the weekend and met me, and then she like brought me home to her parents and was like, I think we can help this guy. And they gave me this really good opportunity to go back to school. And then once they had me for a little while, they kind of realized what they were in for. And then out of nowhere, like because we kind of showed, because I'd shown up and the ministry knew where I was and who I was staying with, and these people went about it the right way as well. They contacted the ministry. They went through like, all the proper channels. And so I ended up in like this home. My dad showed up out of nowhere and he was back west and he'd been sober for a period of time. He's a heroin addict, but he was like clean and sober for a period of time. I think it was like over 6 months or something. And he wanted me back in his life. He like wanted me back in his life. So I ended up kind of working my way back. Like the ministry paid for a ticket. I was like, hey, thanks, nice people. You're lovely. But like, me and the daughter broke up. So it was kind of awkward. And so I went to like, live with my dad again. This girl I was dating, her parents were given the opportunity to take money and like have me live in their place.
Yeah.
And
Well,
they were like lovely people, man. I went from like
Yeah.
dressing in complete rags to dressing like a really stylish punk. You know what I mean?
Right.
With like the proper Doc Martens and like proper
Okay.
stuff from my
Love it.
mohawk. And yeah, loved it, man. Loved it. And they even, I told them I wanted to go to school and they fought for me to get into school, but I'd fallen so far behind. I went to
Yeah.
school and it was like reading, Japanese or something. I didn't understand
Yeah.
anything. Like I couldn't understand anything.
So I'm just want to just a pause here because the last podcast that I did was called The Path of Lost Souls. I went into mental health, but from the through a spiritual lens of what does it mean to be lost in terms of losing our orientation and grounding. And it sounds to me, this is a great segue. I did not know that this conversation was going to go in this direction, but there's
me
a very
either.
powerful theme here. Like
You
we're
started
really
with the
in.
name, and I'm like, oh my god, okay, where are we going with it? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
And I've just recently been reading Oliver Twist with my 12-year-old boy. And it's a really good age to read Oliver Twist, by the way, at 12 years old and older, like as an adult too. It is such a fabulous book. But anyways, I digress. But this concept, to become lost, like it's quite a web, right? Of the different things that lead people astray, where they're in now a corner, like a dark corner of existence, and they do not know that the rest of existence and that a light that can lead them back into their heart, back into community exists. They don't know that. And so they're walking around the hall of mirrors thinking that life is a hall of mirrors. And so I'm just, I'm just identifying, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but those Doc Martens and that mohawk to me symbolize, and the parents of this young woman symbolize a spiritual step. Like there was light. Correct me if I'm wrong. There was light that was, that was, they saw light in you, you saw light in them. And spiritually, it sounds to me like there was a step. There was a leveling up on terms of your soul, accessing your soul and making sure it didn't become lost. How does that? So
yeah, I mean that's pretty bang on. Like the more you talk about it too, like I think I saw the potential to belong. Like I saw the potential to like where I could fit.
Yeah.
The dad, he owned like this photo company. You'd go in there and you'd help him like with these photos. Like he had a shop and that's what he did. And I would like do that with him. And it was actually quite, at the time it meant quite a bit. I felt out of place, but I think it was a very intimate kind of time that I spent with the man finally, right? Because I saw, when I was young, I saw the violence that men are capable of, and I experienced that. And then when I met, this one particular man, it was like, ironically too, he was also like in AA, like he was also like kind of in recovery himself. And that was like, I think my first contact with someone like that. And it scared me because I don't think like this felt like something that like other people get, right? This felt like, other people might deserve this, or other people, did I deserve it in hindsight? Yeah, I absolutely, that intimate kind of connection with a male. Absolutely. I needed that. I think, everyone at that age does. But it scared me. I think my decision to go and live with my dad was just a decision I made out of fear. It was a decision I was like, I haven't burned this to the ground yet, and maybe that's good enough for right now. Like maybe that's like enough for right now. Maybe I just like go on my way so I don't hurt these people, because there were two sides to me. There was a side that was very kind, and there was a side that was a complete trickster. and just like so incredibly hurt. Like just like I can't even properly put it into words, but just like I was so hurt I didn't even realize I was hurt. I didn't even, I had no idea. When you're living on the street, like that Oliver Twist life, it's like you look at someone and you know exactly what to say to them so that they don't hurt you. You learn really
Mhm.
quick. Like and then it becomes like, okay, well, how can I get this person to buy me a slice of pizza, or how can I get this person to feel bad to give me a cigarette, or
Mhm.
or give me some change. Or most people are like, they're going to school to learn how to do math. You know what I mean? Like they're kind of, and I'm kind of navigating through this world by the seat of my pants and kind of just like learning those things, and that was my kind of education at the time, I think. And then it's funny because like after that, like there's like a little bit of a ways actually before we kind of I can fully answer your question, but at that point, I made that decision. I remember them being like those really nice people just being like, "Hey, you don't have to go there. Like you can stay here with us if you want to." And I still was like, "No, I'm gonna go. Like I think I'm gonna go. I think it's good. It's my dad,
Mhm.
And I don't know if that I'd like hope my dad was someone cool. I'd never met him at that point. Not that I can remember. Maybe I think maybe when I was like young, but I'd never met him. And so I made the decision, and then I moved in with him, and he was honestly, he had it very difficult, I think, and he never talked about it. He never like, he didn't last long. Like our whole interaction, he left after 2 weeks again of me being at home
Whoa.
with him. So he literally just didn't come home, and it was so funny. Like I see, when I write about it, like I think one of my favorite writers is like Taika Waititi. We've talked about this,
Mm.
and I think when you start to heal, it's like you can laugh at things. Like my dad was hilarious. Like he wore horrible cowboy boots that he bought at Walmart. And he bought like, and then he had like a leather jacket that I'm pretty sure it was like pleather at the time. And then he just kind of like had this like really bad little mullet. And he was just so like, just life, I think, was so hard on him. And he was on methadone at the time. And so he would kind of like nod off. He'd be like smoking cigarettes, like chain smoking and like nodding off. We'd be smoking cigarettes together. It was kind of like it was just ridiculous. But he had this roommate, and I remember his name was Ron, and he was like this chiseled. He had like a gorgeous mullet. Like he was, he like Twisted Sister would be like playing from his room, and he always had these women kind of like coming and going, and the place just like breathed like sex and smokes. You know what I mean? So it was, and they were going to meetings at the time too, so they were kind of involved in the recovery community as well, and I was around that, and it was honestly like hilarious. Like Ron was kind of everything that my dad wished he was, like he really was. He was kind of everything. And then,
And
my dad was working
Ron
construction, and
probably liked that, if I were to
oh
guess.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. And he was always like, he was like, "Kid, you do the dishes, I'll give you a pack of cigarettes." So I would just jump on that, and I had like, a pack of cigarettes every day. And then yeah, like my dad would come home, he'd, do construction, and he'd come home and he was exhausted, he was just beat, and so I didn't see much
Mm.
of him. And then a couple days went by, he didn't come home, and Ron talked to me, and he's like, I think your dad might be out using, and or he's like with this girl right now, and I don't know. And he's like, but if you want to stay here, you can stay here, but you got to clean up and you got to stop smoking weed. Because I was kind of like, I like somehow found a way to meet the neighbors and kind of smoke some weed with them, and then I'd come home baked on the couch, which I don't think that was easy on my dad either.
Mm.
But he just didn't come home, so it was, I had to call my social worker, and then I actually had to call my uncle.
How old were you?
At that point, I think I was like 11 or 12. I think I had to be
Oh,
like 11 or 12 at that point.
okay.
From there, I stayed for a very short period of time with my uncle, and then I got restless, and I'd made this friend. Her name is Rachel, and oddly enough, she's an indigenous woman as well out east. Like we were kind of childhood friends, and like her dad kind of took off on her, and she like was a single mother that I met. I believe her name was Kathy, and we all kind of got along, and but I'd like formed this huge crush on this girl, and so I kind of called her up and told her where I was. Like I'm out west now. My life's different. Like I like painted this pretty magical picture, I think. And she was like, "Well, I think I'm in love with you. I miss you." And then I was like, "Oh my God!" Like this was like my first experience with that.
Well, what about
Anyone
the
saying that to
girl?
me?
What about the girl that you were dating, and then the parents invited you to
No,
live
we
with them?
ironically enough, we hated each other after a week. Like we kind of
Oh,
like split up. We just were civil. Like she was like, "Well, I don't really want to see you go back to the street," and I was like, "Well, that's nice." And but it just like didn't really go anywhere. But this girl Rachel, I was like really
oh, okay.
infatuated with.
But
Yeah,
you
yeah.
ended up staying
And
with her family for a period of time, more of just like a foster kid vibe.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Uh,
And then yeah, so then anyway, she tells me she loves me. So I, I'm staying with my uncle at the time who tried to put me back in school. I wasn't there for very long. I was kind of living in a house with other guys that were kind of on welfare. Like it wasn't like my uncle had this like beautiful home and like opened it up to me or anything like that. I didn't really know my uncle. It was my mom's brother who's through a lot of the side of the family. And then I get this idea where I'm like, I'm gonna hitchhike back to Nova Scotia because no one would give me a plane ticket. I like called him my social worker. He wouldn't spring for it. He was like, I think you just got to be where you are. And I
hmm
was like, I just didn't, it was like, trying to go back to school and stuff. Like once you've kind of lived that way, it's just really difficult. I think I even made a couple friends for a short period of time, but I was lonely. Like I was just so
hmm
incredibly lonely and kind of
Yeah,
looking for
totally.
somewhere I could belong. And
Oh my God, so young to be having
oh
these
yeah,
decisions.
yeah. And so then yeah, I basically made like a kind of a makeshift sign and I literally hit the number one highway and I tried as hard as I could to hitchhike across the country. Um, and it was honestly probably the best thing I ever did. I know that sounds like I was a kid. I was like probably it's a really dangerous age. Like anything could happen to me. But I like hit the road and I hitchhiked. I think I made it to like something ridiculous like Chilliwack or something. Or I don't even know. I don't even know where I made it. And then I got pulled over in this car and it turned out the car was stolen. These guys were like joyriding this car and they picked me up and they all had like a pretty intense criminal records. But I somehow got out of there and then I convinced the officers that had me at the point. I just convinced them. They gave me some sandwiches and stuff and I was like, I'm taking the bus home and all this kind of stuff. And they're like, well, I can't remember why it is they actually let me go on my own, but I literally just went back to the highway, made a new sign out of something, and then just kind of kept going. And that part is just a total blur. Like I would pick people up, or sorry, they would pick me up, and then we would like party and like, I would like someone would look like a cop who picked me up, and it turned out they were just a security guard, and then we would end up like smoking a bunch of pot. He let me sleep on his couch, and then drive me back to the number one in the morning. I also got picked up by these like French Canadians, and that was like a blast. They were just like so free spirited and wild and yeah, and then I got picked up by someone who made a pretty inappropriate move on me, and I just somehow got out of that situation. I got picked up too by a woman who was like going to spread her husband's ashes at one point, and
Well,
I've written it. Like I literally have like I wrote for my memoir. I wrote like over 100,000 words, and then it's been edited. I probably cut like half of that to like edit it, and it's
well,
wild. Like I had it was just the craziest time. And then I couldn't make it the whole way. I made it to like, I don't know, I don't quite remember, but I ended up getting a bus ticket for the rest of the way. And I couldn't think of anything else to do. So I contacted these people, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I promised them that like everything would be different. If I came home, I'd go to the Kingdom Hall, blah, blah,
mm,
blah.
hmm
And so they basically told the ministry, like, yeah, he's coming back our way, and we really want to take care of him. And then so when they gave me the bus ticket the rest of the way, I just split at the bus station. And then I went and found Rachel, and then she told me she didn't want to be with me, and I was heartbroken. And it was just a complete horrible. You get these like bright ideas. Well, I'm just gonna like go there and confess my love, and then that's exactly what happens. So you're like,
yeah, it's an odyssey.
it's an odyssey, man. Yeah, absolutely.
But
And then
how, I
from
want to
there,
go back
it's
to the question about how you got to being in that chair at 25. Sort of, how did you get through it? I mean, I guess there's that passage
well,
with the family that showed you a bit of connection. And so, yeah, from here, where do you get that ability to have a job and a good job looking after
yeah.
people in the downtown east side from that point of view?
So basically, after that, for a chunk of time, I ended up somehow making it back west again. So like I'd gone back and forth like a number of times. But the final time I ended up in a group home in Surrey here. Um, and it was rough. It was I can't tell you. I got into crystal meth. I got into uh a lot of trouble as well. And I really kind of hit a place where I knew I needed some help. Like I was smart enough to know that like if I keep using meth, if I keep, damaging myself like this, it's not going to go well. And then I actually had a friend who had a family who, again, they wanted to take me in. This was like a reoccurring pattern, you see. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then that time they said no, and it crushed me. And I'll never forget, like the dad he was a really smart man, and he saw right through me and was like, he's like, listen, I like you, but you're not coming to live with my family, and I don't trust you. And it
Mm-hmm.
honestly broke my heart. And I think it caused me the pain that I needed
Mm-hmm.
to reach out and actually ask for help. I remember I was in a group home. I went downstairs and I told them, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And they're like, you know what? We've been waiting for you to say something. And then they literally got me into a Maple Cottage detox, which I don't know if that's still in Maple Cottage now, but I was in a detox in Maple Cottage.
What?
And
How old were you at
yeah,
this point?
that point, I mean, that was probably, I went in there because I sobered up. My first attempt at recovery was 17. So I was like
Okay.
16, just on the verge of turning 17 at that point. Um, and then so um, I, while I was in there, I heard some things at some meetings that they have in there. Some people would come in, and then I saw these young guys come in, and they were teenagers. Like they were like, "Oh yeah, we're going to this like youth program. My life is great. I'm going back to school." What I
Mm-hmm.
saw was like a bunch of dudes that were like had muscles and had tattoos, and were like, "Yeah, like come join our biker gang or something." I don't know. Like it was just
Mm-hmm.
some kind of. I don't think I was attracted for like that. Oh wow, they're spiritual. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that's what attracted me, but they were nice to me. They were really nice to me. And so one of them, I think his name was Jeremy at the time. He was like, you really need to, call us. And he gave me the number to this program. And the next day I did. I went to one of the nurses, or she perhaps was a detox worker. I'm not sure, but I just said, hey, I think I want to go to this program. She's like, they're great. They're like, it's hard. They make you quit smoking and they make you go to the gym, but you should really check it out. And I did. I got on the phone with them that day, and I think the very next morning they came and got me. They heard my story, parts of my story, which I'm pretty sure I'd honestly like lied for a big chunk of it. And then they just took pity, and they were just like, "You're coming with us." And they took me like on the spot, and they're like, we'll work out all the paperwork, and you're coming with us. So they came and got me. They had an awesome Jeep. The guy was like, had a bunch of tattoos. His name was Frank. He's like passed away, unfortunately. But his name was Frank, and he, I remember him wearing like a Misfits t-shirt. And we connected on punk music, and it was like, and then I went to this house, and it was filled with young men that were completely fresh off drugs and alcohol, and they quit smoking, and they're going to the gym, and they're just like, the place was just wild. There's so much energy, and everybody was about helping the newest person in that house. And I was given like a roommate right away, and I was put into these groups, and they would, in these groups, they were like talking about their feelings and like connecting. It wasn't, I don't think it
Mm-hmm.
was like, I don't think it was like the best place ever. I don't think it was, but it was a place that was really trying to help people. It was a place that kind of went against the grain. They weren't about like over medicating children to control their impulses. And they're about, get this kid clean, get him to the gym, get him healthy, get him meditating. Let's try and like get him through like our version of like the 12 steps, and get him some help. And if they need therapy, get them some therapy. And this guy that started it, I still, honestly, I admire the guy. Like there's not, um, I really believe it. I know in my gut that if I hadn't have come across that place, there's no way I would have made it much longer. I don't think. But I finished that program. I did, I think, close to 9 months there. By the end of it, I was back in school. I had my own place to live. I was actually living with one of the staff members to the program,
Mm-hmm.
because like, it's like a lot of recovery communities. Like the houses are connected to like where they all go to meetings, and they all kind of hang out together, and they have their own community, and they kind of look out for each other and kind of keep each other safe. And at the time I was like, it wasn't necessarily the work of the presence process. It wasn't, deeply ceremonial work. It was enough not to die. I think it was enough to give me a fighting chance. And it did that, and I ended up staying clean for, I think, like 6 or 7 years at that point. It was like 6 years, 7 years or something. I wasn't perfect. I think when you'd met me, I kind of thought I was a normie. Like I was like, okay, I'd worked out my stuff. I don't think I really need to go to meetings. And I ended up taking a job on the east side, ironically, like, where my mom passed, literally blocks away. And I ended up taking a job there, but I'd done a little bit of work on myself, but I was still incredibly um sick. Like I was still spiritually so incredibly sick. So when I met John, it was such a pivotal part of my life now. Like I had some real conversations with him and he could see a lot of the hurt and a lot of the anger, you know?
Hmm.
And he was like, with the acting thing, I kind of like loved it. I was like, oh my God, like I love movies, like movies kind of got me through crappy group homes and saved my
Hmm.
life. And, I always had I remember watching Last of the Mohicans and I was like out in the woods for days, like,
Hmm. So this was a pivotal intersection, John Callender, because he introduced you to the possibility of being an actor in the world.
yeah, yeah.
But
And I think at that point, yeah,
before
yeah,
we go
yeah.
down that path, though, I want to back up just a little bit and just acknowledge the value of the system.
Hmm.
You were a success story. You are a success story of a system in the context of it working for the benefit of somebody who's otherwise lost. I mean, we could argue all day long that the construct of the system is what led, to your mother's addiction, to the despair
Hmm.
in the ancestral trauma, the
Yeah.
act of colonialism. Like, so it's intervention, but I mean, the people that are putting it together, I had this image or this feeling like listening to you speak about, going into this group home. I want to differentiate, not the group home that led to the crystal meth addiction, but the institution that was led, sounds like it was led by a particular man.
Yeah. Well, the entire program's like it was the last door.
Oh, it was the last door. Okay. So it's kind of,
Yeah.
bear with me here, but this is like Fagin, but it's turned on its
Uh-huh.
head. This is Oliver
Uh-huh.
Twist. Instead of finding a group of pickpockets led by this older, experienced human being that's exploiting all of
Oh,
these,
dude. Yeah. It's
children.
like Peter Pan and the Lost Boys. You
Yeah.
know what I
Except, well,
mean? It's the same.
that's the counterpiece to Fagin and the pickpockets is Peter Pan and the
Absolutely.
Lost Boys, because but the difference obviously is the goodwill, that there
Yeah.
is a light. The light of
Yeah.
God is really shining through, and for all, warts and all. I'm sure that this guy and John went through that program, and he would tear it to
Yeah.
pieces, right? Because his
Oh, yeah.
psyche, for whatever, we don't need to get into him, but there's this aspect of wanting the shadow to be exposed, which naturally there would be, but it also saved your life. It sounds like, I mean, you tell me.
Oh, yeah. Like there's just no doubt. Like even one of the people that worked there read my file. Like they had my file at that point and she just like couldn't believe, some of the things
Yeah.
that had happened. Like she was like reading it and was just like, where did this, and
Yeah.
what's funny is when I was in that program, I got to this point where a lot of my behaviors started to come up. I started to get really mouthy. I started to, very group home mentality, very typical, like really defensive, not wanting to do my chore. Like I did it for a while, right? Until I didn't want to do it anymore.
You wanting to test the boundaries, I'm sure too.
Oh yeah, I remember the date specifically that this happened, and it was what was important is in those places, man. Like I can't tell you, like I remember 9/11. I remember we're having a group, and I'm really on the hot seat, and I'm really like people are grilling me about my crappy behavior and stuff, and 9/11 happened, and so the place like paused. They're like, oh hey, something's going on in the news, and so we're just gonna pause, and then we like kind of left the group for a few minutes and kind of relaxed and then everyone kind of and then I think some time passed and we went back and they were like okay like so like what's up like what's going on with you and I don't know why I said it on that day but it was the first time I said like you know what man like I was abused as a kid. I was sexually abused and I remember it just coming out that day. And then I remember the boys in the group, um, there were a few of them that put up their hand that had also happened to.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was carrying around this trauma, this thing that was like a ghost. And,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think at that point it didn't heal me. It didn't but it let me know enough that I wasn't alone, right? In some of the experiences I had. And it's interesting you say that it was a testament of the system working because a lot of these places, like that place in particular, they like were nonprofit. Like they seriously went against the grain, right? They were like, doing things like, overprescribing medications to teenagers because they had a feeling was a common practice, right? It was like at that time where like, even like the Percocets and things like that and oxys were like coming out, to deal with chronic pain and all this kind of stuff. And so a lot of those pharmaceutical pushes on youth, that was like a real thing. Parents were like swept away in that, like, oh, you can give me a pill that's going to fix my kid. And this place was like, why don't we like get into the gym and then get him assessed by our doctor and kind of see, if that's the case. And we're totally going to respect that because we want the best for this individual, but let's just see if like there's not some other stuff going on here, right? And I think that was so radical at that point. Like that place was like one of its own, like even to make it non-smoking, like even to be like, no, you're not going to smoke, you're not going to like carry in those street behaviors, you're not going to like talk like you're on the street, you do not say words like goof here. Like it was just a drastic rise. And then you would have the people in the house like holding each other accountable, which was amazing to me because it made them, it taught us about honesty at the time. I don't think all I know is my own experience in that environment, in that house. Like
Oh
I know
yeah.
what a lot of people's opinions might be and that they were, I don't know, but my own experience is if I had gone to any other program, I very much doubt that even years later, when that wasn't the be all and the end all answer, but I was ready to look at some of my actions and look at some of my behaviors and look at some of the things inside I needed to do some work on. Like I remember the things that a lot of those staff members, a lot of that, program taught.
Mhm.
And so I kind of knew when I finished doing things my own way that there was another way to try to live my life on a spiritual basis.
It sounds like there was very clearly healthy examples of masculinity,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
integrity, accountability, clarity, honesty.
Taking care of people too, like really,
Right.
if you see something that is wrong, right? Say something.
Mhm.
Like don't just like let that go by not saying anything, trying not to be involved there. But it's like there would even be situations where like, I went back to school and stuff, and at one point I saw some girl getting picked on. I said some stuff and I kind of almost lost my temper at somebody. And then when I talked to one of the guys about what was really going on, they're like, yeah, like you got to process some of the anger here, but you know what? Like I think you did the right thing. It might not have been, you didn't do it in some like weird, using some weird kind of therapeutic language or whatever, but like that's part of being a man, is like stand up for the people who can't stand up for themselves,
Mhm.
you know?
100%.
And yeah, so I think there were a lot of healthy, um yeah, there was a lot of healthy masculinity and sharing, like really openly discussing things, like just it's a rough day, I'm having a rough day. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why. I'm just kind of feeling off today. Very
Yeah.
simple. It's weird because I live a lot of my life around people in recovery. I live a lot, and that's a very common practice. But my friends who aren't, a lot of the times they really lack the ability to express themselves. And you can kind of see it.
Yeah.
It's odd. It's like you. It's like I think you, Mark. I think you see a lot in people, and you can tell when they have that. There's like some intuition that they're following or they're on a certain path, and you can see it. And in some people, you're just like, man, like I wish so much I could show you this or tell you this in a way that you could hear me. That just like you're not alone. You know what I mean? Like you're not alone in this human condition. It's just human.
I'm a huge advocate of men's circles, and this is
Yeah,
just for
I love them.
every man, not just the
Yeah.
ones that are struggling. Every man, because we all have our ups and downs, and it's really healthy to be exposed to what you got to be exposed to inadvertently, which is a group
Uh-huh.
of dudes. Like you got to be exposed to healthy role models for all intents and purposes. At least men that are striving for accountability, authenticity. I mean, authenticity, that would be where John Callender would intervene. And I'll just say that for him is like, he would call bullshit in that. And I don't know how far that goes, like how much these men are playing a role as opposed to coming from a deeper, authentic place, like being in their heart. But there's all these other pieces um, around integrity, being accountable, being honest, being on time. Those are so fundamental. Those are things that boys need to learn from their fathers
Hmm.
and from the community of men, and that you got at a late age, although you're probably the youngest guy there, because you did
Hmm.
crystal meth, because you almost fell off, into the abyss of existence. Statistically, you shouldn't be here, but you are because
Oh
of
man.
these men who are trying to do things outside of the box. And I love hearing that. That's an authentic step, like to take that chance of not going down the institutional route, and to say, let's do it our way. Let's get these kids off of these drugs. Let's
Hmm.
not listen to their doctor. Let's listen to our
Oh yeah,
doctor. Let's create something that's maybe a little separate from the institution, because the suspicion of institution is just like skyrocketing. And especially since then,
oh
20
yeah.
years ago, it wasn't what it is today. Now it's far more in the open that institutions generally, you need to be approaching them carefully and looking
Absolutely. I mean, I think
at.
luckily, I mean, in a lot of 12-step programs, like, I mean, I don't want to call any out, but it was it was a book that was based on something that was put out in the 1930s by a couple of white guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's kind of it's interesting, like the core of it, the foundation of it is all about connection and connecting with a power greater than yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. But I think in time we've become so much more knowledgeable on, the need for things like antidepressants, right? There was a time like, even around 12-step fellowships that like if you were like, oh, I'm bipolar 1 or bipolar 2 or whatever, it was like people would just automatically judge you. Like there's just this like unspoken because like you can't take anything mood or mind altering it. And it's an interesting thing because now I think, I watched a friend of mine take a cake and she's a very highly successful woman and I adore her. And I was thinking like, that's one of the things she shared at her cake. And I was like, man, what a gift it is that, this is finally becoming something a little less taboo. It's becoming something that like, we're more educated on and we understand that like, yes, sometimes people need certain medications. Some people don't even believe that. Some people, think it's, I don't know. There's, we could get lost in a conversation about that, but I think it's so nice that like in such a short period of time you've watched those kind of groups or cultures like they're expanding and growing because they're actually treating people on a spiritual basis,
Mhm.
I think my own experience was like until I was because here's the thing is like you might have seen me as the healthy guy that was with John Calendar, but I was a damaged little boy sitting beside a
Yeah.
damaged little boy, you know,
Yeah.
with a lot of big dreams and ambitions and terrified of everything, terrified of the world, terrified of the I understand a lot of the fear that I think John, I don't want to make this about him, but I think he's one of the bravest and one of the scaredest guys I've ever met. And it doesn't mean I don't love him. I truly do. And I mean that because I just suffered from it. Like I was so scared to let people in. I was so scared. I always thought like once people saw my flaws, once people saw my shortcomings, they just would want nothing to do with me or they would try and control me in some dogmatic nature. In the last couple of years, I've spent time unlearning the way that I was first taught this path as an artist. You
Hmm.
know, it became a lot less about what I can gain and what people owe me, and this feeling of like superiority and like I'm owed for something because I'm good at something. And it became a lot more about like where I found the freedom is like what can I give? Like what
Hmm.
can I truly give to a production? And now it's like I'm producing like kind of multiple things and more on the creative side. And I'm like looking at my first, looking at show running my first TV series as well, and it's wild. It's like and I'm telling the stories of these men that we're talking about, and these
Hmm.
and these themes that we're discussing right now. I didn't know that I would be doing that at any point. I didn't know that I would even have the voice as a writer to do that at any point. And now it's happening. I get to like tell the stories of men that have incredibly like impacted my life, and they made an impact on on Vancouver, on BC in general, on the, addictions community as well, like on the recovery community here. And what a gift that is, like what a gift. But, you know, I think there's a point where I have to let, the creator decide what my career is going to be.
What I want to touch on is going back to this, you shouldn't be here in terms of the statistics. And now you're an actor, you're writing and directing, or at least writing, potentially show running different projects. You've given your heart or you've given yourself, you've surrendered to a higher power.
Hmm.
What are your parting words here for the audience?
I just saw this I saw this new film that Daniel Day-Lewis did with his son. Did you see it? It
No.
was oh man, it was a beautiful film. But I was watching it and I was thinking, there's a huge difference between content and art. And we're drowning in content. And what I liked so much about this film was it was a lot of nature, and it was a lot about men dealing with very difficult subjects, being brave enough to kind of sit in the emotion while they're telling their stories. but they feel it to the extent where you believe you get a sense of hope watching it, that there's something going to change by the end, you know? And for me, like being a survivor of certain things, I watched that film and I was riveted by Daniel Day-Lewis's performance. I mean, he's one of the best of all time, but there was something really beautiful. It really made me want to get back to like sometimes what you and I talk about, Mark, is like creating something for the sake of creating it without the expectations of what that might be or what the payoff might be.
Mhm.
And I think that's really my calling as an artist. I don't think I'm, necessarily, if I am one day or whatever, it'd be lovely. Like I don't really see myself as a lead in a TV series but I do believe that I'm meant to tell stories with subject matter that present a lot of questions and hopefully leave people with a sense of hope, you know? The world is such like you know, it's sometimes pretty dark right now. I think everyone can kind of relate to that, and I think if I can, if you're an artist and you're listening to this, or you like, tell stories in any capacity, I think really telling the truth and just at the same time like leaving people with a sense of hope that things can change, that things can heal, that things can get better. I really believe maybe that's what I'd like my final words to be right now.
Beautiful.
Uh-huh.
Thank you very much for such an honest share.
Thank
an
you.
honest
I didn't
interview.
even know we were going to go there. So
Neither did
that's,
I.
it's always kind of intense with you though, Mark. It's always like, it always kind of gets right to the bone. It's good. Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
That's where I have fun.
Right on. Right on.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Steve,
Yeah.
Coyote, Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, listeners, for being a part of this. We started last week with a podcast titled The Path of Lost Souls, and here we have Lost Soul Found. So maybe that's what we'll title this one. Sacred Village Podcast. This is Mark A. Lewis, over and out.
I lay my head down.
Check out my lovely partner's music, Kristina Jessen, at KristinaJessen.com. And there's also more information on what we're doing. We're doing a land project up here, a traditional land development with a community intention. And if you're interested in any of the retreats that we're a part of and part of organizing, you can find all that information at sacredvillagepodcast.com. Have a wonderful day.
Floating